welcome everyone. I think we'll officially start. Thank you so much for joining us for this side event of the World Circular Economy Forum. This discussion on the topic of social justice in a global circular economy, we think is incredibly important. We are very grateful to have the opportunity to host it. And it's great also to see the interest that this topic has gathered. I think we've had over 600 registrations for this event, and a lot of you are already coming in. So thank you again for joining us today. My name is Yasmina Limbashar. I am a researcher at Circle Economy, and I will be hosting the session today. Like I said, there is a poll already on for those of you joining, if you'd like to tell us a bit more about yourself to get a sense of who's in the room. And before we dive into the agenda for the day, maybe first I should say that this session will be recorded and will be made publicly available later on. And second, a quick introduction to Circle Economy. So we are a nonprofit based in Amsterdam, working to accelerate the transition to a circular economy that is just and inclusive. Our Circular Jobs initiative in particular looks at the social impacts of the circular economy and really works to ensure that the transition positively impacts work and workers, promoting worker rights, focusing on quality of work, skills, and inclusion. So I think we already have some answers to the poll. I'll leave it open for those still joining to answer it. I can already tell you there's an even distribution of people from the public, private, civil sector, a lot of others. So I'm very curious what your background is. Feel free to also use the chat to introduce yourself and give us more information about what brings you here. We'd love to hear. Throughout the session, I also encourage you to use the Q&A box to ask questions for the panelists. You can also put them in the chat, but that would make our lives a little bit harder. So please do use the Q&A box. You can also upvote the questions that you'd like to see answered or answer them, leave comments on them. So please do engage as much as you like. And there's quite a few participants already. I'll maybe end the poll now, so you also get a sense of who's in the room as much as you can in a Zoom webinar. So I'll share the results from Europe, but also a lot of you working in the circular economy field, and a lot of others again. And I see Lara asking if we can activate the chat. I'll ask my colleagues, Georgie or Joel, if you could look into that, please. And without further ado, this is what we have on the agenda for you today. So we will kick off with a bit of urgency setting to really anchor the session into why it's so important to consider issues of social equity, especially in the context of a global transition to the circular economy. We'll explore what positive alternatives we can think of for circular economies that are more just, and what actions governments in particular can look to. And really the main course of the event, we will invite our fantastic panel to have a discussion on how we can bridge the gap between utopia and reality. And without further ado, I will give the word to Liz Ricketts, founder and director of the Or Foundation, who are on a mission to build a justice-led circular economy, to kick us off.
Thank you, Yasmina. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Ghana. I'd like to begin by asking you to close your eyes. Imagine your favorite beach. Maybe this is somewhere you go every year, or maybe it's somewhere you've been only once, or maybe, if you're lucky enough, you live there. Do you have it? Now I'd like you to open your eyes. Next slide, please. Hopefully the video will play. So I'd like you to open your eyes and think about what you would do if this was the state of your favorite beach. What would you do if this was in your backyard? What would you do if this was your reality? And skip to the next slide, please. So this beach is in Ghana, near Kantamanto Market, the largest secondhand clothing market in the world. And Kantamanto has two truths. One is what you've seen so far. Kantamanto makes visible fashion's waste crisis. In 2020, Ghana was the largest importer of secondhand clothing, and Kantamanto itself sees 15 million items a week in a country of just over 31 million people. Clothing sent to Ghana by the global north in the name of charity, landfill diversion, and now in the name of circularity. Here in Kantamanto, retailers call their job a gambling job because when they buy a bale, they have no idea what is inside. And when you add up all of their expenses, the average retailer is $2 in debt per item by the time she opens a bale. Because fast fashion has lowered the quality of clothing overall, there is no longer enough high quality items to generate a profit. So retailers are in a debt cycle and do not have money to invest in rehabilitating lower quality items. Back one slide, please. Sorry, the slides are not syncing to the image of the burning waste, please. Back one more. So as a result, about 40% of the average bale leaves the market as waste. Not because it's all unwearable, but because the 40% is costing retailers too much money. See, if a retailer opens a bale on Wednesday, no one comes to buy it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, she still spent money every single one of those days to transport the clothing, to pay electricity and other daily expenses. So at some point, that 40% is costing her too much money, and she decides to let it go and to gamble on another bale simply for cash flow reasons so that she can put food on the table that night. Because Ghana does not have a way to hide this waste, Ghana does not have sanitary landfills or incinerators, and Ghana also does not have the audacity to ship this waste around the world for other people to deal with, this is where excess hits the ground. Clothing enters the environment. Much of it is burnt out in the open, as you can see here, these piles of clothing transforming into air pollution, and much of it washes out to sea with millions of garments coating the seafloor around Accra. Next slide, please. Now, Kantamanto's second truth. Kantamanto is the largest reuse and upcycling economy in the world, recirculating a minimum of 25 million garments every month through reuse, repair, and remanufacturing. Typically, when it comes to conversations about circularity, the global north is framed as the one doing the innovation. But if you think about the ingredients we need for circularity, we need three things. We need a mindset, we need a skill set, and we need infrastructure. And of course, for infrastructure, we need investment. Kantamanto has two of the three. Next slide, please. We'll talk about the mindset first. So the average consumer shopping in Kantamanto does not conflate quality with conformity. They do not expect every garment on the rack to look the same. and because nearly every Ghanaian citizen has grown up taking cloth to a local tailor and co-designing a bespoke wardrobe, these consumers look at clothing as material that can be altered, repaired, transformed, and customized. And then there's the skill set. This is really where Contomanto shines. There are 30,000 people that have created jobs for themselves in this market, working tirelessly 6 days a week, doing the actual work of circularity, and yet they've never heard the word circular. Tailors like our friend Kweku, who you are privileged to meet today, are master upcyclers who buy waste from retailers, and even though they have no control over what the waste stream will look like from week to week, they're able to create 600 units, 1,000 units, 5,000 units of the same design. Contomanto has many of the solutions we need if we only are willing to listen. Next slide, please. Meanwhile, as circularity becomes popular in the global north, my organization is being contacted by fiber-to-fiber recyclers in Europe who want us to gather up all the waste from Contomantos and ship it to them for free or for 10 cents a pound. This might sound like a great idea. Wouldn't shipping these clothes to Europe for 10 cents a pound keep that beach clean? No, because the waste crisis is driven by a debt crisis, and coming to the people who have risked the most and asking them to hand over material that they are in debt for free, that's not circularity, that is disaster capitalism. But I worry that this will continue to happen because the global north is pretending that we can transition to a circular economy without reconciliation and without a subsidy. Why are those recyclers coming to us, you might wonder? Because an exporter in Europe can earn 90 cents a pound selling cotton-rich clothes to Ghana. So why would they sell their clothes to a recycler in their own country for 10 cents a pound? Brands expect circular textiles to cost the same amount or less than linear ones, but they ignore the fact that the linear economy, cotton and polyester, in fashion's case, is highly subsidized. Will we be subsidizing the circular economy with slave labor? Or with policies that prioritize those who have risked the most and been most harmed by the linear economy? I certainly hope that it is the latter. Next slide. To me, the answer to all of this lies in focusing less on materials and more on the redistribution of power and wealth. Because in a circular economy, the whole point is that there is no bottom or top of a circle. The circular economy is an invitation to build an industry where actors can meet on more equal footing. Last slide. I'd like to return to the beach, even though the intro didn't go that well. Hopefully you understand the points. And whatever it was that you said you would do if this was your reality, that's how we need you to act, because it is the reality here and in many parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I think. Oh.
Hi everyone. I think I lost Yasmina potentially, and she's got control of the slides, but hopefully she joins us again shortly. Thank you, Liz, for that powerful, inspiring introduction, and really brings it, to see what's happening actually on the ground. We're, in a privileged position in Amsterdam, writing about this stuff, but really important to bring those voices to bear and have that influence. What we do and what we can all do to make a difference. My name's Joel Marsden. I'm a senior researcher at Circular Economy based in Amsterdam, and together with today's moderator Yasmina, I'm a co-author of the paper Thinking Beyond Borders, Social Justice in a Global Circular Economy. And for us, the circular economy is a means to an end, the end being an ecologically safe and socially just operating space for mankind. By changing our economic systems, design out waste and reduce what we use, the circular economy provides an opportunity to change the way we live and work. But risks emerge when strategies are adopted to tackle environmental issues without measures to safeguard people and their livelihoods within and beyond borders. Too often, the social considerations, people's lives and livelihoods, are overlooked. And the multiple pathways to the circular economy are possible. Next slide, please. And I can't underline this next point enough. It won't be socially just by default. It has to be designed. And that means it's up to us, to decision makers in the wider global community, to design the frameworks, take decisions, and set the rules for that end. How can we find pathways that benefit people and communities with lower incomes? And what actions do policymakers in high-income countries and the multilateral institutions need to take now to support a globally just transition to the circular economy and shift us on to the right track, the just track? Next slide. Today's understanding of the circular economy fails to address issues of global social equity due to key assumptions and oversights around power, trade, and the role of technology. As the paper highlights, in global value chains, cheap raw materials are sourced from low-income countries for the manufacture of high-value products, the wealthier consumers, only to export the low-value, unwanted goods and waste back for them to deal with. Such a circular economy is rooted in linear ideology. And as Liz so eloquently highlighted, it exacerbates inequities, contributes to social unrest and displacement, supply chain disruptions, and also to corporate and governance risks. But it doesn't need to be this way. Under the right conditions, a circular economy can provide opportunities for people everywhere. We need to build a different vision of the future, one that doesn't extend, but challenges the status quo. A circular economy that is global and socially just. A circular economy that by design facilitates a more equal distribution of power, wealth, and responsibility across and within countries. Better circular jobs that ensure sustainable livelihoods everywhere, and culturally appropriate technologies and social innovations that enable rather than displace work. And how do we achieve this? How do we get there? We set out 3 levers for action. Firstly, to consider people beyond your borders. As you go about designing environmental circular economy strategies, identify the impacts on workers beyond borders. Develop and implement plans to address these impacts early on. And from a corporate side, apply mechanisms to increase responsibility for quality of jobs in supply chains. Secondly, trade responsibly. Promote trade that supports circular strategies that prevent waste. Enhance the transparency and standards of trade for secondary materials to responsibly phase out the dumping of waste and unwanted goods. And adapt our existing and future trade agreements so that they facilitate sustainable circular business models. And the third lever is to exchange know-how and means. Now, this starts by recognizing a range of approaches for the circular economy are possible, and empowering local representatives to determine what those appropriate solutions are. It also involves exchanging means, providing direct financial support and assistance, as well as the frameworks to support long-term impact-driven investor action. And finally, it's also about sharing knowledge and facilitating dialogue that's truly two-way and enables triangular cooperation. So with that all said, I hope to have provided food for thought for the panelists and look forward to hearing your reflections as well in the audience. And I invite you all to explore further, share the report's messages with your networks, and embed them into your work. Together, let's put a global, socially just circular economy firmly on the agenda, put our collective goodwill into action.
Great. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Liz, as well. Apologies for the technical mayhem that may have happened in the last couple of minutes. You've both given us quite a lot to think about already. Also a lot to digest for everyone in the audience, I'm sure, just as it was for us to research and write about Joel. And fortunately, we do have quite a bit more time to unpack all of this. So I'd like to invite all the panelists to turn on their cameras for the panel discussion, the main course of the event. So please, if anyone has any questions, you can use the Q&A box to add them. We'll have room at the end of the session for audience questions. And just a quick introduction to who is actually joining us on the panel today. Casper Edmonds from the International Labour Organization, Sonia Diaz from WIEGO, Women in Informal Employment, Globalizing and Organizing, Kwaku Mensah from the Mento Market, joined by Sami Oteng, who will be translating on his behalf. Thank you, Sami. And Taco Westerhuis from the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So I'll stop sharing my screen for the time being. And thank you, all of you, for joining us today. So we've heard about why we need to consider social justice more proactively in the global circular, a bit about what more inclusive circular economies might look like. I think what's really on our minds is how do we get there and what do we need to keep in mind on the way there. So I'm curious, this is exactly why we wanted to have you on this panel to hear about your reflections on these questions. So maybe I'll start with you, Kwaku. So you are a tailor and upcycler at the Mento Market that Liz introduced earlier. You work primarily with garments that would have otherwise gone to waste, mending them, upcycling them, giving them a second life. I'm curious what your perspective is, maybe what are some of your frustrations, perhaps with the way current sustainability policies are being designed. What would you want to see changed? Just a bit of time for Sami to translate. Don't forget to unmute yourself when you're with us.
The woman is a Jumana, no wasting your challenges. So I have challenges, baby. Because Bibia am free a sorrow emma, Nemum, a dear free a seer and echo. Because Gigi and Yama, wasting a beard man, ye to sanitation, and then your friend is a Yama who robbed or ma. Jumana no so no and for so be but almost Sanchez can free and it's a changes paper there was say be free a sorrow paper never buy na ye wo ase ebe so yeso na koba say ebribia na ye na wase no ebribia down na ye ko na esorofo no e na bibi papa bia if e call mo jen ni mo na ye ebrani ko so bre.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak on this panel. What he spoke about, or what he said, was that for the fact that what he has seen with all of these circularity and talk about circularity is that it's almost as if like policies and any ideas that have been pushed are always there to benefit people who are not really the frontliners or people really pushing circularity. He has been working in this business well over a decade, and like there has been numerous conversations that has been going on, but none of these policies affect him being a frontliner and someone who's actually on the grounds. So what he's saying is that like if there's anything going to change and there's anything better going to come out, we should actively involve people in the front line. And even if we can involve them, whatever policies or conversations that we are having, we should make sure we are centering them in those conversations.
Thank you, Sami and Kwaku. I think very powerful recommendation to start on, and I think maybe a good segue into I'll look to you, Taco, maybe at the other end of the table, because you are effectively one of the main audiences of our report. So you work on circular economy policies with the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Great to have you here. Curious about how the Netherlands are taking steps to consider the international impacts of their transition more often.
Okay, Yasmina, thank you very much. I do hope that I'm not at the other end of the table, because I think that would be the wrong starting point altogether. Because one of my really main inputs in policies is to be at the same table and not opposite with the people that we work with. So that, you know, that's something to start with. One notion from a policy perspective that I want to give you is that at the moment, in quite an unstable world that we live in at the moment, where a lot of things have changed in the last 5 years, is that there are a number of transitions going on at the same time. I don't have to explain clear climate transitions, energy transitions, biodiversity, and I can go on for another 5 or 6 issues that are at the table at the same time. We are working on that. We only recently got a new cabinet, so that means that at this moment there is a lot of policy developing going on. We just had a new climate strategy presented. There will be a new Africa strategy devised in the coming months, and I'm working myself at a new raw material strategy as well. And circular economy will be part of that. Interestingly enough, I give it a lot of thought, but of course transitions are not the new thing. I mean, they have as long as there are people, there have been transitions, and quite recently in our own history in Holland, but in Europe in general, there have been the transitions from coal and coal mining to different situations, and I think there's a lot to be learned on what went well and what went wrong. I know that in the Netherlands there were alternatives were developed, not yet in the circular way, of course, but the circular economy is one of those solutions that can be brought to the table. At the time, there was a lot of alternative employment developed, and I think we can look at those processes that have gone before us. To come back to Kwaku, actually, I think one of the main issues, and that's also, I have to say, a bit of criticism to the paper that the otherwise excellent circular economy developed, is that at a certain point it says, well, it's very important to talk to the people on the ground that will actually be affected by this. But I completely agree with Kwaku. It should not be sort of the 7th step or so. It should be the first step. We tend to, and also in policy making, we tend to make policies for people somewhere, and we tend to think that we know and have all the solutions, and then later on we say, okay, let's discuss this with the people on the ground. I think that's the other way around, and that's not just in dialogues, but it's also in diplomacy. The case. I know that our new Africa strategy will focus on those dialogues as well.
Great. Maybe.
Shall I leave it for now?
For the time being, I'd love to dig deeper into how we can design these engagements and listening like earlier on in this policy making process in a bit. For now, I'll turn to you, Casper. I hear you have the best job in the UN system. You are head of the unit Extractives, Energy and Manufacturing at the International Labour Organization. I'm just quoting you. These sectors all face an existential crisis, and you're focusing on just transition. Yeah, curious to hear also what does that entail and what your perspective is.
Thank you, Yasmina. Yes, I have the best job in the world because I work not only for the UN, I work for the ILO. And I have the best job because the mandate of the ILO is what we're talking about today. The mandate of the ILO is social justice. It has been the mandate for 103 years, and it will be the mandate of the ILO going forward. Our newly elected Director General, Mr. Gilbert Humbo from Togo, he has announced that the first thing he will do is to create a global coalition to advance social justice. He wants to advance social justice for all, so that we leave no one behind, including those in the growing circular economy. Now, we are noticing in the ILO how so many of our 187 member states, more and more, are adopting policies and strategies to accelerate the transition to the circular economy, including the countries that we have here with us today: Netherlands, Ghana, other member states of the European Union, China, India. And this is something we warmly welcome in the ILO, because, as was said before, the circular economy is key to delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals, including Goal 8 on inclusive growth and decent work. And circularity, as we know, is critical to ensuring that we stay within our planetary boundaries and that our common humanity can thrive for generations to come. That being said, the challenge before us is not only existential and essential to tackle, it is enormous. Let me offer just one example. In the ILO, we conservatively estimate that we can generate up to 78 million new jobs if the world transitions to a circular economy. But our models also show that we stand to lose 71 million jobs in the linear economy. So there's a net job gain, but huge displacements below that. Jobs will be created, but also destroyed. The magnitude of this challenge is comparable to the one that our grandmothers and grandfathers faced when they converted a wartime economy to peace, when they created the foundations for the societies, economies, and labor markets that we have today. And if I may, for a moment, add to that challenge, it's a complex one, because contrary to what people might think, the circular economy is not, by definition, a green economy, and it's not by default a fair and just economy. To illustrate that point, I invite you to close your eyes and imagine for a moment that you stand with me on another beach, the beach of Alang in India, just north of Mumbai. This is the beach where about a third of the world's ships are broken when they have proudly sailed the seas and have reached their end of life. 95% of the steel of these ships is recycled. Up the road from this beach, you can buy used lifeboats or fine cutlery from beautiful cruise ships at a great discount. And of course, that's good. That's circular, right? We're keeping materials in place for longer, and up to 30,000 livelihoods and jobs are sustained. But as you can imagine, breaking ships on a beach is not good for the environment. And the working conditions in some of these yachts are extremely poor. So like the pictures we saw before from the circular economy in textiles, this is not the circular economy that we want to advance or accelerate. That beach is a reminder that the circular economy is what we make it. That we must avoid recycling the issues, the injustices, the inequality of the linear economy today when we advance the circular economy for tomorrow. and that we must ensure that the circular economy becomes an economy that protects people and the planet with better opportunities for employers and for workers everywhere. I'll leave it there for now, but I'll be happy to come back with some concrete advice and guidelines that our member states, employers, and workers together have adopted for how we can ensure that the transition to the circular economy becomes a just transition, and that that transition takes place and complements the transition from the informal to the formal economy, and that it complements the transition from a fossil fuel economy to a zero carbon economy.
Thank you, Casper. I quite like what you said, that a circular economy is what we make it. It's not green or just by default. And I think this is a good segue into you, Sonia, because you have been working on making circular economies more just. So you are leading work in Brazil on inclusivity and the integration of informal waste pickers especially. And I know Brazil often comes up as a case study on this topic. So it would be great to hear your experiences as well. And I'll pull up the backdrop to your reflections in a bit, if you just kick us off.
Okay, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here because this is such a key issue. The UNEP Circularity platform highlights that circularity transition needs to be inclusive to trigger the transition from winners versus losers to a win-win situation, not only for the conservation of the environment, but also for the well-being of all. But I ask, what place is there for informal waste pickers in circular systems, given the complexity of such systems? If we look back in the past for answers, we can see that in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, when modern solid waste management was born, that is that moment where solid waste collection and disposal systems were created, and it started to be managed by municipalities, prompted by the spread of diseases. We can see there evidences for displacement of the waste workers of that time. As the well-off began to connect the street waste with the spread of diseases, those who worked in informal collection of waste became more and more stigmatized. And gradually, legislation was introduced to address the problem of poor sanitation conditions in ways that excluded informal workers. So let's fast forward to present days in which circular economy concepts are quickly spreading around the world. So how will informal workers be affected by the blurring distinction between raw materials and waste, by the new legislation and procedures that comes with it? What are the challenges in terms of ownership of materials and requirements for traceability that the informal workers will face? And most of all, what frameworks will be in place for a just transition to circular economies? As the intersection between waste pickers and circular economy has usually been accomplished through the implementation of EPR models, especially in my geography, Latin America, I want to briefly reflect about the opportunities, but also about the challenges faced by workers here in Brazil in our country's reverse logistics system as an example for us to, in terms of both the possibilities and challenges. Very quickly, our EPR system was included in 2010 by our national solid waste policy in the system of what we call it the reverse logistics. The key instrument of this reverse logistics system is a take-back system for recovery of discarded products, packaging and other residues from consumer, and in reintroduction into the production process. And included also some key policies to support waste pickers through investments and technical support, implementation of drop-off containers, promotional environmental campaigns for source separation. But there are a lot of challenges regarding this policy that I want to highlight, because we have noticed that most of the cooperatives have yet to be included in the system. Only half of the existing cooperatives. We left behind unorganized workers. So although the policy really is a great advancement, I think we need to highlight that there is no clarity about criteria regarding payment for services to waste pickers cooperatives, and there is an imbalance in terms of the negotiation power between the parties involved, that is the government, industries, and workers. So finally, I want to quickly come back to the circular economy as a concept. I really welcome this paper from Circular Economy because it brings one of the critiques we have been making in terms of circular economy, the fact that it does not organically really factor in inclusivity. So I think it is very important that we further this debate and that we create opportunities to make this concept something that is useful for the working poor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonia. I have a lot of questions for all of you. If Casper, you could also turn, and Kwaku, if you could both turn your cameras back on. I think you've all touched on a point that maybe we haven't talked about a lot in our paper, which is exactly this involvement of businesses. Which I see also a question from the audience in terms of what the role of businesses is, and in terms of the power maybe imbalance that they bring. So and we do want more businesses to take to be on board with the circular economy, what impact will they have on the existing networks and structures that are currently dealing with waste? Curious, maybe Casper, if you have a reflection on this.
Thank you very much. Yasmina, let me answer this way. We have a roadmap for ensuring that the transition to the circular economy becomes a just transition. And that roadmap is posted in the chat. It's called the ILO Guidelines for Just Transition Towards Environmentally Sustainable Economies and Societies for All. It's not something I have invented. This is something that has been negotiated, discussed, and agreed by our 187 member states, employers, and workers. It sets out the principles, but also some practical policies for creating inclusive, fair, sustainable labor markets as we transition to circularity and environmental sustainability. And what does that mean? First of all, if I can interpret these guidelines, we should stop creating circular economies for someone. We need to create the circular economy together with those that are already in circular jobs or implementing circular business models. We need to have on board with us the employers and the workers and the other stakeholders that are part of the linear economy today. We need them to further innovate when it comes to circular business models, and we need them to be part of the solutions and find solutions that work for them. To do so, they need voice. Their voices needs to be heard. For that, the transition to a circular economy needs to be a rights-based one. We believe in the ILO, it has to be based on international labor standards, because these international labor standards provide a clear and level playing field with rights, roles, and responsibilities for all. And then if we want companies on board, the guidelines say that we need to create an enabling environment for a new generation of circular and sustainable enterprises to grow. There need to be incentives, there need to be finance for this, there need to be clear rules of the game. Too many of these businesses today operate in the informal economy, where their potential to grow and create value for society is so limited. We also need to invest in the skills that are there in some countries and that need to be upgraded so that these jobs go from being linear jobs to circular jobs. And of course, we need to protect much better the workers that are in the circular economy today. Just think about safety and health, which has become a fifth fundamental principle on rights at work. How crucial it is to ensure that those that handle our used e-waste, or those that break the ships, that they are protected in a proper way so that they don't risk being injured or ill or dying when they go to work. We need to make sure that they have proper working conditions, that their rights are expected and that they're not subjected to violence, harassments, or discrimination. So these principles are they're set out in the ILO guidelines for just transition. And I encourage all policymakers, business leaders, employers, the organizations, workers, to use these as we formulate and implement a new generation of policies and of business models to advance the circular economy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Casper. It sounds like quite a lot of work indeed has already gone into answering the questions that we're exploring today. So I think my colleagues are sending a link to exactly these just transition guidelines in the chat for everyone in the audience. Also using this as a reminder to the audience, if you have any questions for the panel, to please submit them. I think in terms of, there's something else that you had said earlier, Casper, in terms of the expected impacts of transitions to the circular economies in terms of jobs. So where will the new jobs be created and where will the jobs disappear? And I think particularly relevant to Kwaku as well today, if we say, or if we think about what will happen to the exports of secondhand garments and what will happen to jobs like Kwaku's, your job, I think there might be a general conception that we should use precaution when designing policies that aim to reduce or increase the exports of waste, because there are economies that are relying on these. But I'm also curious, Kwaku, like what your take on this is, because we've seen from Liz earlier as well, the state of those exports. Yeah, I'm curious what what would you change, what do you perceive as potentially a threat to your livelihoods versus what do you think could change overnight that you would benefit from? Maybe in the meantime, a great question for you again, Casper, to think about from the audience is, to what extent do you know if those guidelines are being implemented But I'll come back to you. Kwaku.
Okay. Near woman is a near man. No, see a beco ye chicacra, and I see a betre ye chicacra man first dinner, but not a muye cacra. Ne ball and yet too much. When you pan a trap bear na, when yan selection film near Aka Siena, and your papa net is a yena, ye to me, yes, any man, your cockroach born the amay, nay to me the aye ejuma. By now, no, and Yamana ebano, but from baby 60% na aye bola. I am crying ye waste ejuma no krebu cry ye fa enye. And tis a name on the ombe to me adani ne nika cra. Edi amaya and the boy. Ebema waste na a dose be brain so at every say no we full be no 1 be no come here say untuminya be name hope unkra be 10%. At least 100% untuminya be 10%. Go at 10 and 15 about 75% na I waste. The over wasting in so no or be peke kakra or pe wom. And this no so go on some more to and market came a dear gum aye basa. Inti yabeko ye chikakra na yahwe na o mase san na ni kakra nia enye na wo fi se yamfa nye hwe no mo mfa mbraye de ye bibia enye yie no o mfa mbraye satare na teten ye de friend say amma apempam ene ade ye didi agum ye da pepa ye nsa ya to agu that way no eno eba ha eno na be ma waste no edoso e ma ye nto mo hwe ene ma na mo de ba no mo hwe mu yie emfa ma ye. Yes.
Yeah. So Kwaku's response is that he would like to take us all back from when he started working in the market in Kantamanto as an upcycler. And then one thing that was from the beginning was that the upcycling market or Kantamanto was not reliant on just clothing coming in. It was also reliant on domestic textiles as well, domestic textile waste as well. So going up from the beginning when he started in the market, it was both things coming from the global north and also local textile waste being upcycled. And what has happened over time was that before the last decade, the things that used to come from the global north in the bills were things that were of good quality. But compared to now, it's just trash. Sometimes even him as an upcycler, they pick some of the garments from the bills and there's nothing he can do to salvage it. So it's really how the things have shifted from the time he started until now. Now it's almost as if you open the bill and all you find is literal trash, nothing that you can really work with. And then so if there are going to be real changes, is people in the global north or people sending things in need to be conscious of the things that they are sending in. They can't just send anything and expect them to work off of it.
Absolutely. And I see also comments in the chat exactly to that, align with that in terms of the circular economy is also about avoiding waste in the first place. So before even sending it onwards and pass it on to other countries, how can we make sure that we reduce the generation of waste in the first place? Oh, Casper, I see.
Thank you. You asked the question before from the chat, and thank you very much for that question. I enjoy the chat. It's very interactive, just as it should be. You're coordinating this very well, Yasmina. So just to say that, yes, the ILO guidelines for just transition are already being used. At the global level, these guidelines are at the heart of the Climate Action for Jobs initiative that Secretary General Antonio Guterres from the United Nations has asked the ILO to lead. So together with the International Organization for Employers, which represents more than 50 million SMEs, and the International Trade Union Confederation, which represents more than 250 million workers, we, together with other UN agencies and many other partners, are already helping countries to create quality jobs while simultaneously delivering on climate goals. And this is at the same time also promising, but also so frustrating. We have a roadmap. We know what policies are needed and what works. But what we don't have enough of is data and information about opportunities for enterprises and working conditions in the circular economy. And that's why the new initiative that we're launching with you in the circular economy, and I see Esther is with us today, and also with the World Bank, where we want to create reviews on jobs in the circular economy. We want to bring to the attention of policymakers and business leaders and all others who are concerned about the kind of jobs that can be created, the number of jobs that should be created, but also the issues we see in terms of low-paid, low-skilled jobs with little protection in the informal economy. We want to focus on which sectors are there potential for businesses to grow, for jobs to be generated, but also which supply chains are the issues we need to resolve. What can we learn from circular economy strategies in different countries? To what extent have they integrated a human-centered approach and care about the people in the circular economy? And that's that kind of data and that kind of granularity is so key to move from preaching to action, to move from utopia to utility, or what it was to reality, as you said in the theme for this meeting, and to ensure that this transition becomes a just one. Over.
Great. And I'm now very curious, Taco, what you're taking away from all of this, and if you're getting any inspiration for your work, or if this resonates with some of the challenges that you're also facing in terms of designing circular economy policies that are just, so the data elements, or
what's very frustrating to me is that we're only at the beginning of an enormous transition that will take, if not years, it will actually take decades. And for a policymaker, of course, that is very frustrating, because normally we like to work within politicians' time frames, which are generally 3 or 4 years. And this also makes it a lot harder to stay on top of the processes. But what for instance, to give you an example, we are of course working on and working with just transition principles, but to really work on just transition as a policy in itself, that we have not really started doing that, even though I know the Netherlands is within circular economy quite in the forefront of developments. So yeah, again, we are at the beginning of a process, and we hope to see a lot more of each other in the coming years, if indeed not decades.
Well, that's very good to hear, especially considering, like you said, the Netherlands is leading on the circular economy globally. Another question I have is to you, Sonia, because, well, I don't know to what extent are these just transition guidelines linked to the kind of work that you're doing in terms of supporting informal workers to organize and mobilize. Great name for the organization as well. But yeah, curious to hear what your take is on how what the role and what the I'm struggling to frame it, not what the end goal should be for integrating informal workers, but yeah, what pathways perhaps there are.
Thank you. I think, this whole discussion of just transition is, of course, really relevant for the work that we do with informal workers. It's relevant in many ways. First of all, because, without a seat at the table to discuss, the transition to circular economies, to solving plastic pollution, for instance, without a seat at the table for informal workers, there is no just transition, right? So it's great that we now we have here in this panel representatives from Cantamanto. We need to hear the voices of the working force. So this is one of the things. The other thing that I want to draw from what Casper had said, which also for me relates to the whole issue around a just transition. It's the issue of data. You know, I completely agree that data is essential. If this in the solid waste management area has been critical. You know, we don't have consistent metrics on solid waste across the world. This is so crucial because without monitoring and having a proper data, we cannot even support organizations of the working poor to have a better understand of the system as a whole, also about their role in terms of contributing to solving the key issues that we're facing, and how they can better strategize in terms of a formalization from the ground process. So I really want to second that, and I think we need to have a global data monitoring system about solid waste, about how workers are affected by the transition to circular economy or transition to better plastic management. This is crucial. So the just transition is key, but we really need to factor in the working poor in the discussions of just transition, because it has, from my understanding, been a bit too focused in the past on the energy sector. So it's about time that we really take on this framework. And as Casper said, the ILO has, you know, the recommendation 204, the decent work agenda, and many other recommendations that are relevant for us in terms of roadmap. And let's get this and really think sector specifically, because sometimes just transporting policies from other sector will not work in a given sector. Yeah.
Great. I see. Okay. I see Casper nodding, agreeing. Great. I would like. Sorry, I'm just also keeping an eye on questions from the audience. Anna is asking, does anyone have any concrete or practical examples on large organizations that have successfully transitioned in a just manner into circular business, a circular model? Open question.
Maybe I can come in here with an example. If I didn't know that, I learned it only recently, but the most circular, fast-moving commodity we have today from a materials resource point of view is the car. 80% of the materials in our cars are recycled. They're recycled when cars are repaired, but also at the end of use. In the USA alone, car recycling is the 16th largest industry. It employs 100,000 workers. And it contributes 25 billion to the gross domestic product of the US. And yet it still has such a bad reputation. You know, nobody likes the used car salesperson. But in fact, the used car salesperson is a hero. Because if it weren't for that industry, these cars wouldn't be recycled, right? Now, so there are examples of how ecosystems, not just one large company organization, but ecosystems exist. And we need to create these ecosystems around specific sectors, as Sonia said. And that starts with organizing those who work in the circular economy. You can organize them through cooperatives or other social economy entities. You need to give them voice because they have the skills and the solutions for how their jobs and their livelihoods can be improved. And then you need to also provide this environment for new enterprises to grow that, will maybe produce cars that don't even need to be owned, but are leased, or cars that are produced with modules that you can more easily take apart and recycle, so that we minimize waste out from the design phase. So it's those kind of industries and that kind of solutions we need to look for. In the ILO, I can't mention name of big companies because then I would be, criticized for favoring one over the other. But Clara or others who raised it, I'll be happy maybe in a private conversation to compare notes, because I'm sure you and others in the chat here know of some too.
Great. I'd like to maybe just reflect a bit on what's already been said and maybe give you all a chance to add any final reflections. I think it almost sounds too simple, but there's been a resounding call for everyone to actually sit at the same table as one of the key first steps. You've mentioned also maybe let's not reinvent the wheel, since we have these just transition guidelines already, we have this roadmap. Maybe it's time to just get started and figure out ways to actually implement them. And then a few of you have mentioned the need for more data. Is there anything else you'd like to add to our action list, so to say?
Let's create this circular economy together. So let's together take both ends of the circular economy. Use all our force and collectively push this first into a smile and then into a beautiful circle. Because we know, as I said before, we can shape the circular economy just as we can shape the future of work that is green, that is brighter, fair, and circular. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you today.
Great. Thank you, Casper. Sonia, Kwaku, Taco, any final words?
Yes, I guess I will make the plea for us to work stronger into facilitating high-level policy dialogues between government, industry, and workers in the formal economy, so that we can have better coordination for the creation of the enabling environment and the effective implementation of any just transition policies, because not only do we need a framework, a roadmap, but we need to monitor, and we need to monitor its implementation in ways that are participatory. So this is my call for today.
Kwaku or Taco?
I was kicked out of the meeting again. I have some digital issues, but no. What I think is very important, what really helps me too in policy making, are exactly these events that you now organized, and it gives an excellent opportunity to talk to a lot of people that normally, as a isolated policy officer. You don't see so many people together. You don't have these discussions too often. So no, keep doing that circular economy. Thank you.
That's so great to hear. Thank you. And Kwaku, last word.
Koku was just sharing his last words with me, so I'll just go ahead and translate. So Koku said it was really nice hearing from all of you and what you said. And the discussion around policies is something that really inspires him, because not a lot of people within the circular economy undergrounds are able to have the opportunity to discuss, their issues and their struggles in terms of policy making. And he's happy to meet all of you. And then you all seem like leaders and people in authority in your various organizations. And so now that you've heard the story of Kantamantuan and the work that you're doing, he urges you to push the conversation as you move along. So don't let this be the last time you talk about Kantamantuan and the work people are doing in Kantamantu, but it be a part of your conversation you move on with policy conversations and conversations within the space.
Great. Thank you all so much for your participation. I'll give the word now to my colleague Esther, who leads our Circular Jobs Initiative, to wrap us up and have some closing words for the session. But thank you so much again for taking the time and for engaging with us, all panelists.
Thank you so much, Yasmina, and also a huge thank you to our speakers for your openness and bringing such different and rich perspectives. And also thank you to our audience and being so active in the chat. It really helps us bring alive these online events and these important discussions. As Yasmina said, at Circular Economy, we think it's incredibly important and timely to be having these discussions with you all. So as Casper said, as more member states and governments around the world turn to the circular economy as a tool for tackling all sorts of different issues, that these interventions are designed in ways that consciously safeguard the rights of people. And for me, this conversation today just really emphasized that for circular economy to be a tool for all of these different issues, from the climate crisis to inequalities in our labour market, they can't be designed in a vacuum. We need voices from all regions of the world. We need industry actors, social partners, frontline workers, informal workers, all to actively involved, and as Taco said, from the outset of their design. And as Liz so powerfully put it, it's just about as much about retribution and rebalancing power as it is about uncovering new opportunities and innovation. And we need mechanisms and evidence that will help us to really understand the opportunities, the challenges, the ripple effects of different policies. And so, as Casper mentioned, we're incredibly happy to have joined forces with the ILO and the World Bank to create a global data set and set of methodologies that we can use to really learn from each other about what is and isn't working when it comes to quality of work in the circular economy. And we're hoping by holding this conversation in the run-up to the main event, the main World Circular Economy Forum in Kigali in December, that the need to really think consciously about mitigating these trade-offs, bringing different voices into the dialogue, and actively pursuing those missions will be integrated through the themes and the discussions in the room. So again, thank you all for joining. Thank you to our speakers, and back to you, Yasmina.
Great. Thank you, Esther. And speaking of the main event, we will be in Kigali for the World Circular Economy Forum, as well as COP27. So if you are also planning to attend and would like to meet us, please let us know. You can learn more about the Circular Jobs Initiative and our work on our website. Maybe before you log off, I forgot to mention, but it would be great to get a sense of what your main takeaway was from the session. If you'd like to leave that in the chat, that would be great. But I'll leave some time for you to submit that. But in the meantime, I'd just like to thank everyone again, all the panelists and speakers, Liz, Sonia, Taco, Esther, Joel. I'm forgetting someone. I always do. I'm so sorry. But thank you all for joining and for your time. And yeah, hopefully we'll make some progress on this very important issue. And until next time.